What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we finish up our talks on the Oath of Redemption Paladin. Of course, if you have not watched my ranking video, that will be up in the icon above for you right there. And so that is where we went in depth into everything this subclass has to offer, but today we put it into practice and actually make something that is going to be a lot of fun to play, and it's a really cool support based paladin. I think you guys will like it. Before we do that though, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. As you can see, most people who watch the channel are not subscribed, so please don't be one of those people. Help us to reach our goal of 5,000 by the end of this year. I think we can do it, but I really need your help. We just reached 3,000, so I'm very thankful to all of you who helped me to get there. And so for all of you who are new, welcome back. And it's good to see you all back in another video. And of course, make sure you share the video with your friends and make sure that if you haven't already, click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded. One other great way to support the channel, of course, would be by joining. So down below, you can join to become a member of this channel. You can become a snapper. I'm Dapper, but you can become the snappers. And so by joining that at the very lowest tier, it's very cheap. It's only $2 a month. You get access to all of my written out build guides that I make for all of my builds. I also put out build guides for all of my variety builds. I also put those out for all of my subclass fixes as well, so that you have a nicely formatted document to use at your table or just in study when you're following along with the video. They all just come included. So that is going to be a really great resource for you. Again, it's a really nice way to help support this channel and what I do. So thank you all so much. If you would like to join at higher tiers, then that would help me out even more. So at the silver tier, we of course get a special shout out. So thank you to all of my silver or higher members. You all are amazing for helping me out to be able to do what it is that I do. And you also get all of my videos 24 hours early. So all of my silver members were probably watching this yesterday, and so that is a really good perk as well. And then at the finally at the gold tier, we have the ability to help me to pick what I'm going to do for my variety builds. And I've got a couple other things coming very soon that are going to go with that gold tier. So be looking forward to that. And that is going to add even more value to an already pretty affordable perk. So thank you all so much to all of my members. And even if you are not a member, thank you so much for watching this video. It really means a lot to me. So the Oath of Redemption Paladin is a really cool subclass like what we talked about earlier, and it leans a lot more into being a tank, into being a sponge, into being something that isn't necessarily here to deal out as much damage as possible, but rather to absorb or negate as much as possible. And this is really, really effective on a Paladin chassis already, but it gets pushed even further. And with some slight multi-classing, I think we can go even further with this to make a character that is really satisfying and really strong at the same time. And it's just a really, really great utility and great protector. So with all that out of the way, I think we should go ahead and start the build. Starting off, of course, we have our race, and this week I wanted to go with something a little bit different. Again, last week we did the custom lineage route, and some of you didn't like so much that I had gone custom lineage, even though I used to do it a lot. I've done it a lot less here recently. We're not doing that today, nor are we going variant human. I want to pick up something specific when it comes to a feature from a race. Yes, I want a lot of feats on this build, and so I'm going to end up pushing some ASIs back a little further than I want to, but honestly, I would rather go with this race just because it's a lot of fun. So that's what we're going to do today. We are going to go with the Warforged. So of course, if you're not able to use Warforged, then there are some alternates, which we will talk about at the very end in the honorable mentions, but the Warforged makes you a robot. You are a really cool robot that serves some sort of deity or just the ideal of redeeming yourself. And so the way that I kind of see this character is someone that maybe was a bodyguard of some kind of important individual who kind of failed at his or her job. And so Now you are trying to protect either your entire party or just one particular party member. However you want to tell that story, I think that that really lends itself here, and you are just the sentry that follows around this this individual or your party, however you want to flavor that. So I think this is a lot of fun, but Warforged gives you some really cool stuff. You get a +2 and a +1 to 2 stats. Of course, those are malleable after Tasha's, so we can do whatever we want with that. With Constructed Resilience, we get a few things that are really good to remove from the equation, such as poison damage. We have resistance to that, and we have advantage on saving throws against being poisoned. We also can't be magically put to sleep, which could be really handy, especially at early level. So that's pretty cool. We also get Sentry's Rest, so we take a shorter long rest, which is also pretty good. But the most important part of this is integrated protection. So we get a free +1 to our AC, which is always going to be a good thing, especially on this build. And we also can don and doff armor a lot quicker, and we can also just make it part of our body. So you truly can make yourself look however you want. Now, personally, I wish that they had taken away the strength requirement for this race just because of that integrated type of thing. But ultimately, I guess you're not making the armor any less heavy by doing so. So I get it in that case as well. But so we do still have to meet the 15 strength requirement if we're going to be wearing heavy armor. So just something to keep in mind. And then of course we also get a skill proficiency and a tool proficiency. Those are really personal choice, whatever you want to do from there. Then we look at our stats, and of course we're going to be using our modified standard array as always. Again, I say this in every video. If you're using standard array, if you're using rolled stats or any other method that's not this one, your stats are going to look different, and that's okay. You will just have to adapt those in the order in which I am putting mine in. So you're going to want your top stat in the same stat that I'm using, and we'll go down from there, and you may have to adjust some stats here and there. So I'm going to put my top stat into Charisma this week, my second highest into Constitution, my third highest into Strength, third into Wisdom, and then Dex and Intelligence. Really, Wisdom, Dex, and Intelligence are just kind of throwaways on this build. But I prefer to have Wisdom a little bit higher, whereas things having to do with Intelligence are typically a lot less common. So that's why I dump Intelligence on most of these builds. For our +2 and +1, I'm going to put my +2 into Strength so that we get our 15 for our heavy armor. And then I'm going to put my +1 into Charisma so that we end up having an even 18 there. So that feels really good. For our equipment, we're going a little bit different from what I normally recommend on Paladins. For this week, I'm going to, of course, recommend heavy armor, but for the weapon, I'm going to recommend doing something with finesse. Now, the rapier, of course, is the most common form of this, but if you have some other weapon that you like better that is a finesse weapon, then you may go with that. We're still going to be using strength and then eventually, maybe not strength, for our attacks, so we don't necessarily need to worry about dexterity, but the finesse property is going to be important to something we're doing later. So just make sure you have a weapon that has that. And then of course we can grab a shield because we've got a free hand. A shield, of course, is going to help us to boost our AC. And so let's kind of go into the main focus of this build, right? First of all, we're here to soak up damage. We can't soak damage if we're dead. So we need to be able to attract attacks to us and be able to also have a lot of health and be able to deflect as many attacks as possible, right? So we need as effective AC as possible, and we need as effective saving throws as possible. Saving throws, of course, are going to be helped out a lot with Aura of Protection at Paladin 6, but beyond that, we need to worry about making sure our AC is really high, which we also can do. So we're going to be finding different ways here to really help out what it is that we're trying to do, and we're going to have multiple avenues in order to get there so that you don't necessarily have to blow all of your resources in one situation or another, and you've got multiple avenues that you can take. So, you ready? Let's jump in. At level 1, we're going to start as a paladin. Again, we are not going to be going for, the best damage on this build. We're going for more defensive type stuff. So fighter is kind of out on this build. It really just doesn't make a whole lot of sense from a utility perspective. Yes, second wind would be nice, but we would have to take a lot of fighter levels in order to make that really worth it. And action surge doesn't make a huge difference to me when I'm not really going for damage. So I'm not going to worry about taking any fighter levels. And so if I'm not starting fighter, I want to start Paladin. And so this gives us the best proficiencies that we can get here at this level. And it also goes ahead and picks us up some really awesome features such as Lay on Hands and Divine Sense. Lay on Hands is of course one of the best healing features in the game, and it's also is a really, really good scaling ability. It goes up by 5 HP every time you take a Paladin level, which adds up pretty fast, especially when you consider that you can use just 1 HP at a time, and that can be used to pop somebody up back to conscious. So that can be used quite a bit, and so it's really effective in what you can do with that. Divine Sense allows you to view any creatures that are of certain types that are around you, whether you can technically see them or not. So that definitely can be very handy in certain situations. At level 2, we're going to have an issue, right? So we're doing a good job. We then possibly lose our person that was of interest, and our person dies at this point. So we turn to not so good ways, and we're going to use this chance to go ahead and take a level in Warlock. So with Warlock, we are going to, of course, be taking the Hexblade dip here. Listen, I've been really good about not doing Hexblade dips a lot, but with this one, with us needing to be as tanky as possible, I need my Constitution to not be the 3rd class here. I need it to be at least the 2nd best. So with that, we can now shift our attacks from Strength over to our Charisma. So that's going to feel a lot better when it comes to stats. On top of that, we of course can curse creatures around us, and we can then have an expanded crit range. We have a bunch of other really cool features that we can do with that, so that's a lot of fun. Hex Warrior is also an option. It's going to give us the proficiencies that we need, and basically just allow us to do all of those things that I just described. So that's a lot of fun there. And then we also get Pact Magic. So we're going to get 2 cantrips, and we're going to get 2 first level spells. So for cantrips, Eldritch Blast is right there, so that makes a lot of sense to me. It gives us a ranged option because otherwise we really don't have one, so I think it's good to bring that. For my other one, I would definitely consider Mind Sliver. Mind Sliver is a nice little like light version of Bane, essentially, because it allows you to affect later saves, right? And it also is an intelligence saving throw, which is pretty good to target, one of the best to target. So that feels really good as well. So that's not a bad cantrip at all, and it can definitely help on the support side. For first level spells, I've got 2 picks here, and the first is the shield spell. We get that from being a Hexblade Warlock for obvious reasons. This allows us to boost our AC by 5. Again, creatures will want to attack us after we do certain things, and shield is going to help us to stay a little bit safer. We will have an alternate to shield a little bit later, but shield is when you absolutely need to burn a spell slot. Our other one is going to be what we're going to use a little bit more often later on. Then we also are going to get something like Armor of Agathis. I think Armor of Agathis is good because then once somebody does break through, then they have to take a little bit of damage from hitting you, and that's going to feel really good. So I think that that's nice to be able to dish damage back out. That's kind of our whole thing, right? When somebody attacks a creature other than us, we can bounce that back, especially on really big hits. So it's kind of a theme for this subclass. So I think Armor of Agathis works really, really well. And eventually we probably will want to upcast this as our spell slots allow. At 3rd level, we go back to Paladin, and we are actually not taking any more levels in Warlock. We're just taking the 1 and we're out. So next up, we get a fighting style, and I've got 3 options here. My preferred option here is the protection fighting style. This allows you to impose disadvantage on attack rolls coming into a creature that is next to you. Creatures being next to you is going to be somewhat common because you have the auras, right? So people are going to want to be right next to you in order to benefit from those. And this is going to just go with that in order to possibly turn a hit into a miss. Interception is also a thing, but I would much rather give disadvantage and give a chance of dealing 0 damage than give a chance of reducing a little bit. So that's just me. I just don't think that it's nearly as effective going with interception. Yes, it's less limited in what you need to be holding, but we're holding a shield here, so protection works just fine. Of course, if you want to go with defense or dueling, you can. Defense is of course a more selfish thing. Dueling is if you're wanting to deal a little more damage. but those are just backups in this case. I would much prefer to go protection. Of course, we also get spell casting and divine smite on top of all of that. Some favorites among the paladin kit here. For spell casting, of course, we don't get any cantrips, but for first level spells, I would take things like bless. I would take possibly Shield of Faith if you want a decent option right now. Bless is probably going to be a little bit better, I would say, but you could take that as well. And Compelled Duel is actually really good here as well. It basically gives you essentially a taunt, right? Other game systems have things called taunts where you can force enemies to only attack you, right? There's nothing like that specifically in Dungeons and Dragons, unfortunately. I wish there was, but it would be kind of powerful, right? So this is basically a soft taunt, a softer version of that, where you give disadvantage against every creature other than you. So it's encouraging them to attack you. And you have a sky high AC, so it really works out, right? So that's a really good spell, and I think you'll get a lot of use out of that. That's probably what I would use most often if you're not fighting like a big group of enemies. If you're fighting a big group of enemies, bless all the way. I think that's going to be your best option in that case. At level 3, we of course are going to get our channel divinity here, and we're going to get a couple of options here. One allows us to do really well on our charisma checks, on our persuasion checks, which is very good. Can't really go wrong there. And of course, the other forces the other creature to make a wisdom saving throw and take the same amount of damage dealt in radiant damage as it just dealt to one of your friends. That can be huge on a crit, right? Somebody comes in and deals a ton of damage on a crit and you just reflect it right back. That can be pretty nasty. So I think that that's definitely a very useful thing, and I would use that most often. But Emissary of Peace is also quite good. So if you're outside of combat and don't have anything else to use it on, I think it's definitely worth using and giving a try for sure. We also get Divine Health at this level, so it's kind of a ribbon thing, but we're immune to disease, which is fine. It's kind of redundant with us being a warlock, to be honest, but it's fine. It's just part of the price you pay here. But at level 5, Paladin 4, we're going to get our first ASI or feat. I'm going to go ahead and take the tough feat right now. I need as much HP as possible, and this is going to be one of the quickest ways to get there. So the tough feat, of course, is just going to give you extra HP every time you level. And so it sounds very simple. It doesn't sound like it's all that great. It is. The tough feat is fantastic. It's a great feat to take here early. And for us to eventually be absorbing damage from others, this is huge, right? We need a big pool in order to get us to level 15 when we actually can start healing ourselves passively. But until then, we just need to make sure we have a lot of HP to go around. So that's a really good thing to take here at this level. At level 6, we're going to be a Paladin 5, and we get extra attack, which is great. I'm not going to turn that down. Like I said, us attacking is the least important part of this build. Being supportive is really the main thing, and making sure that we're keeping our allies safe. Then at this level, we also get second level Paladin spells. Aid, of course, is a really big standout to me, being able to bump up the maximum HP of a number of creatures, which is really good. Find Steed, of course, for mobility, and Warding Bond is also quite good. It definitely fits within the theming here of taking damage and moving it around as necessary. So I would also definitely pack that for a character of this theme. Next up, at Paladin 6, we're going to get Aura of Protection. This is the level that I absolutely had to blitz to, besides the Hexblade thing, in order to really shore up this character, right? In order to be super effective, we need to be really good at saving throws on top of just our AC, and that's what this does. So this is a huge help, and of course it also extends to our allies nearby, so that's really good. And now if I'm going with the Aura of Protection, I've got to go with Aura of the Guardian as well. Aura of the Guardian, of course, is going to allow us to use our reaction to magically take damage away from allies, and so that's huge too. I think that this is going to be really, really helpful in helping us to achieve our goal. If you don't have spell slots left for the Warding Bond, then that can be definitely something to use. But you know, this is a lot more free than Warding Bond would be. So definitely something to consider when you're going forward. Okay, at this level, we discover some power within, right? And we discover that there is more to us than originally met the eye, that we were called to do more in life, to restore the balance of everything, right? And to keep our allies alive. That is our biggest purpose, and we need to make sure that everything is in order to do that. So we're going to take a level of sorcerer here. So the sorcerer level is going to be really helpful. Now it is hurtful in form of HP, because that's a little rough, but Tough Feet is helping us out here, of course. But we're going to get some awesome spells, and we're going to get some awesome features here as well with the subclass that we're taking. The subclass that we pick up here is Clockwork Soul. Clockwork Soul is an amazing subclass. It is pretty much my favorite sorcerer subclass out there. I think it's a ton of fun, and it's all about restoring balance. It's all about taking things that were out of whack and putting them back into line, right? And so, you know, your friend or your leader or whoever died shouldn't have died. You need to be able to find the ability to restore things to the way that they should be, and this is a really cool way to do that and a really cool way to flavor it. So we get Restore Balance here at Sorcerer 1, and Restore Balance is basically a negation ability of advantage or disadvantage depending on the situation that you are in. This can be huge. This can absolutely save lives, right? You can negate an opposing rogue's sneak attack. That's pretty huge, right? Or if somebody has disadvantage because the enemy is in darkness and your ally can't see, forget it. It's gone. So this is really, really cool and can definitely come in handy. It will come in handy a lot, actually. So definitely make use of that. And then of course we get spell casting here as well. I would recommend things like Lightning Lure to get people away from your allies and get them over to you. And Shocking Grasp is also interesting because it can allow you to get an ally out of melee with somebody. And that helps out because then they can no longer take reactions, right? Shocking Grasp is very useful in that way. So I think it's an underrated cantrip in my opinion, but that's just me. Then for first level spells, I got two options, and these are the two best ones I could find. Absorb Elements, because Absorb Elements, it allows you to possibly tank certain hits of certain types of damage. That can be huge, especially when it's something on a saving throw that doesn't work with shield. And Silvery Barbs. Silvery Barbs, of course, is the ultimate in protection technology here. And so we can force a new roll of a die and then give advantage to our friend who maybe needs it on a future saving throw or attack roll or whatever it is. So that's really good. I know it's really strong. I don't care. It's really fun. So I definitely think that it's going to be a lot of fun there. We have a lot to do on our reaction, like a ton. So definitely be keeping up with all of the things that you can do. You get one reaction. So be careful with trying to use more than one because you have a lot of reactionary features. So you should be using your reaction every single turn to do something. I know there are a lot of characters that don't use your reactions a whole lot unless it's an opportunity attack. You should be using your reaction for something every single turn. I'm just saying, you've got plenty to do. Use it. So then at Paladin 8, we go back to Paladin, and again, we're not taking any more Sorcerer. We're going back to Paladin, and we're actually going to be a Paladin the rest of the way. So 18 levels of Paladin. I'm still very happy with the amount of Paladin we're taking on this. And so at Paladin 8, of course, we're back to an ASI or a feat. I'm going to take the Defensive Duelist feat here because this allows us to bump our AC, essentially kind of like the shield spell. The shield spell, of course, was our kind of go-to at the beginning, but Defensive Duelist is going to basically jump in its place and save us on spell slots. So I think that's really, really helpful, but the tough feat was a little bit more important. So that's why we took the finesse weapon, and that's why we took tough when we did. And you can't go wrong with tough, right? I'm definitely not kicking myself for taking tough. It's always good. Then at Paladin 9, we don't get any features, but we do get third level spells. I don't have a ton that I'm really in love with here. Spirit Shroud is great, and Revivify if you don't have somebody who's already taken that, but you're also level 11. So if you don't have anybody in your party that has Revivify, you built a weird party. So yeah, I don't know how you got this far, but good job. That's good. Now you can be of a lot more help to your party. So then at Paladin 10, you get Aura of Courage. That helps out against the frightened condition for you and friends nearby. At Paladin 11, improved Divine Smite. So we now just deal extra damage for free, which is always going to be a good thing. At Paladin 12, we get another ASI or feat. I'm bumping Charisma. I know it's late. I know it's really late, but I really needed those feats first, And so, yeah, now we get a maxed out charisma, which feels good to finally do, even though most people have stopped playing at this point, but it's okay. Then at Paladin 13, we get no features, but we do get 4th level spells. And I'm going to take things like Death Ward and Find Greater Steed. Death Ward, of course, is going to be a great feature dealing with protective type of things here. And so I think it's really good in the bodyguard-esque type of character. Then Paladin 14, we get Cleansing Touch. Can be useful depending on what you're being affected by, especially if it is an opposing spellcaster, that kind of thing. Level 15, Protective Spirit. So we finally get the ability to heal ourselves every turn. No matter what, this is just a really late feature, but it's really good. And so I'm really happy to finally have that. At level 16 in Paladin, we finally get another ASI feat. I'm taking Resilient Constitution. This is going to help me with my saving throws. It's also going to bump Constitution, so that's more health. So on both sides, that's going to be really, really good for me. So I really like that. Paladin 17, of course, no features, but we do get 5th level spells. I'm going to say pick your favorites here. I'm not really partial to any in particular. I think that I'm better off personally upcasting some of my other spells and just going from there, but that's just me. So whatever you want to do. I think we should use those on defensive spells and smites if you want to do that, but there aren't any that are really screaming out to me on this particular build. And then finally, Paladin 18, our auras go out to 30 feet from 10 feet, which is really awesome. So what do you think of this build? Let me know down in the comments below. I would love to know what you would do with a subclass like this. And so let's go ahead and look at our honorable mentions here. These are what almost were, or what very much was for a while, and then got changed at the very last second because Dapper didn't like it, and that's usually the case with a lot of these. But I wanted to look at some other racial options first. And the Hobgoblin, updated from Monsters of the Multiverse, is a really good first option here. This gives us the bonus action Help, and that can be super helpful, right? It's help action, it's at range, it's really nice, and we can buff it further a certain number of times per day, which is really, really cool. I think it's incredibly effective, and definitely fits the support type build that we are going for with this. So definitely something that I would consider. That was almost what was. If I didn't go Warforged, it was going to be that. And also, of course, the Aasimar, either the Fallen or the Scourge, for obvious reasons, are really good options on a Redemption Paladin. Just they're really great. Healing Hands, always going to be a good thing. So definitely can't go wrong there. For feats, I'm going to go with 2 out of left field that I literally never ever put on here. Inspiring Leader. Inspiring Leader is a really fun feat. My Paladin that I had when I ran Curse of Strahd here recently had Inspiring Leader, and it saved my party's lives several times. So it's huge. It allows you to give a rousing speech, and then there is temporary HP to everybody who heard you up to a certain number of characters. So that's really good. And it scales pretty well as well, so that's really nice. And then the Actor feat. The Actor feat, of course, works really well with Emissary of Peace in order to make you really effective at your charisma-based checks. And so definitely consider taking that as well. For other multi-classing options, I have a couple. Number one, of course, if we were to go somewhere different with Sorcerer, I think Divine Soul makes a lot of sense here. Divine Soul, of course, gives you access to Favor of the Gods, which gives you just extra dice to roll on certain types of saving throws and that kind of thing. That's huge. That can definitely work as a great defensive feature. And then, of course, you still get access to all of your normal spells as well as the Cleric kit. So the Cleric spell list is incredibly effective. I probably would have taken more levels in Paladin in order to get like 2nd or 3rd level spells in Cleric if I'm going to do that. But yeah, it's really good. And then also the Eloquence Bard. The Eloquence Bard, when I did my ranking video, I get comments on it even to this day, like once a week, telling me about how I was kind of dumping on Eloquence Bard too much. It's good, right? Eloquence Bard is really good. And Cutting Words is really nice here in order to, again, run defense, in order to really help out your allies. You also, of course, get Silver Tongue, and Silver Tongue works really well with Emissary of Peace. So yeah, it all works really well together. The Eloquence Bard works really, really well here as a multi-class option, and that was a half-made build that I had before I switched over to this one was with the Eloquence Bard. So it's a really good option. I think it's awesome. Definitely worth considering. So that is our video for today. Of course, next week we get to our penultimate Paladin. That's a mouthful. We are talking about the Vengeance Paladin next week, which is a lot of people's favorites. Again, people love Paladins. I say some people's favorites like every week almost. I probably won't say that for the final subclass because I don't know if that's anybody's favorite, but I know a lot of people really like the Vengeance Paladin, and I am also in that camp. But does it rate well? We'll have to find that out next week. Also, make sure to watch my battle for this week's SSBA Pokemon Draft League. That'll be going up again on Sunday. And then, of course, Paladin stuff will continue next week on Tuesday. Until then, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.